And we're back here once again with another episode of the MSK show, and it is going to be episode 94. And in this episode of the MSK show, I am going to be having a conversation with content creator T. Alex Ratcliffe. So he made an appearance on my other podcast a long time ago, but as you guys know, I'm like DC Comics. I retcon that. So we're all in on this show. So basically, I was post-crisis, then I'm New 52, then I went Rebirth, and now I'm basically Dawn of DC into All In. Now I'm all in on this show, you know? So as you guys know, my goal for this show is to hit where F&T is at, which is episode 300, and we're getting fairly close there. I had a podcast at 600 episodes, so it takes a while to get there, but I've learned with this show, producing the best quality episodes I've ever produced in any podcast I've ever done. And it's about the journey of getting there to that big number, actually, But at least going into 2025, at least going into 2025 will at least be at the most part by the end of that year at 200 episodes. So, we're making moves here, guys. We're getting there. So it's been a while since we talked to Alex. He ended up getting a promotion at his job. So how's that been?
That has been absolutely terrible. I have learned something very important. No matter how much you hate your manager, they probably hate you even more.
Oh, gosh.
I'm kidding. I love all my employees. They're fantastic people. Please come to work tomorrow, everybody.
Yeah. And randomly, just don't call off, 2 hours before your shift. Yeah. People don't like that. Yeah. That's probably the most stupidest thing someone can do. Because, if someone doesn't want to come into work, they know way in advance that they don't want to come into work that day.
Yeah, and I'll tell you all exactly what your manager wants to hear if you're going to call in. Here's how it goes. You go, "Hi, I'm not coming in today. See you tomorrow." That's the whole thing. That's all they want to hear. That's all. They don't care what your excuse is. You get a point either way. So,
oh God, man. So it's been a while, man. How you been doing?
It has. Oh, I've been busy as hell. I published a book this year. I did some testing on the books that I've written.
Okay.
Found my post-apocalyptic homesteading series is much more popular than my having people beat each other up series. So guess I'm out of being a mangaka.
Hell yeah, man. So we'll start here because, you've been a content creator for a long time. Have you read any recent, indie books that you would recommend to people, actually? Indie novels, because you're not an indie comic guy. You're an indie novel guy.
Yeah, so I did The Black Crown this year. That was pretty good. If you like Fantasy Orcs, it's a pretty good series. There was a lot of thought put into that. What else did I read this year? This year's been kind of a light year because I've had so much going on at work. Let me pull up what I actually did this year because I just finished a mainstream TikToker book, and it was hot garbage. So let's see here. So I did one for Vampire Mall Cop. That one was actually pretty fun. It's a fish out of water story about a vampire who has to come stop his aunt at this mall meant for supernatural creatures. And it's, like I said, it's a fish out of water kind of comedy thing where the vampire is the only straight man in the story. That one was a pretty good book. Aside from that, and I did, I don't think it's independent. I think this guy goes through a big company, but there's a series called Bobiverse. If you really like hard sci-fi, it's a good series to get into. It's not hard sci-fi. I mean, there's a lot of explanation into it, but it's not as complex as I think the series should be. But it's definitely a good read. I recommend it to anybody who likes sci-fi or who likes really weird concepts. Like the main character is an immortal space probe that can copy himself. And so all the main characters, except for a handful, are all copies of the main character. But since the story takes place over a couple hundred years, you get to see how they deviate from the original. So some become like biologists, some become like farmers. They scatter throughout the stars, and a lot of them, some of them become their own worst enemies. Like literally, like they hate each other. So
I feel like with novels now, everyone's go-to genre is just sci-fi at this point. Doesn't it feel like that?
I'd like to agree with you, but I've read too many romantasy books to agree.
Yeah, it's either sci-fi or romance now, you know?
Dude,
And I like fucking chick flicks, man, so I'll read the books where the girl wants the guy with a six-pack and she'll never be interested in like me. Why does that feel so relatable? God.
I don't know. I'm working on the 6-pack. I'm up to running 2 miles a day now, so ain't quite there yet. It's funny to see a big old guy like me running.
Good God, man. So, what do you think the indie novel scene needs since you kind of read a lot of people's stuff now at this point?
So, I think all it really needs at the moment is some polish. It seems we're kind of, and forgive me for the authors that I know, I think we're entering a winnowing stage where some of the people who weren't really serious are kind of dropping out. Some of the people who were very serious about it are starting to gain more traction. We're starting to see some people actually rise up in this, like people who are repeatedly bringing out some newer and better things. And we're also separating the people who are going to be prolific from the people who really aren't going to write more than 1 or 2 books. But I think really it's just going to take some time. It's going to take some practice. It's going to take a few books. I'd say in about 3-4 years, we'll probably have a whole crop of people who are probably in the stage of making movies, like actually getting stories out there that are going to start going mainstream. Because the main publishing industry, they are in some serious trouble. Like some of the stuff it's like the games industry. You know how the games industry has been put like Ubisoft, just crash after bomb after another bomb after another bomb. Well, publishing industry is going to become the same way, I think, soon.
You would think more people would be covering it, you know?
So I think it's because books are more of a quiet thing, you know? It's
always kind of have been, you know, book drama's not really ever been as publicized in drama like for other kind of things you're into. Books are pretty much more of a quiet medium, actually. Like you don't often hear about certain authors having problems with each other, you know?
Not so much publicly, no.
Yeah.
Behind the scenes, there's still a lot of drama behind the scenes, but
yeah,
you don't see it brought out in public so much. Well, that short of like Stephen King, who's been having some really big meltdowns lately, but that dude wrote some weird stuff. I liked the movies based on his books, and then I found out all the stuff that was in his books. I'm like, oh, okay. Maybe I don't want to take his opinion too seriously.
Yeah, like he's the type of guy that a lot of people probably looked up to. And then when you finally found out who he was based off his social media presence, you were like, wow, it's such a complete different person, right? That's why for me, I always just separate art from the artist. Like if I see a actor or you know, in a movie or a TV show or a voice actor from an anime, I just know that's just an isolated thing and completely separate from who they might be as a person, you know?
Well, I think, and it should be important for the artist to remember this. And like if either of us ever get famous, I think it's important to remember, no matter how popular or famous you are, nobody wants to hear about that weird crap you do and nobody's looking.
Oh yeah.
It's like keep that to yourself. Some mystery's okay, you know. But a couple of authors have been spurging out lately. Forgive the language for that one, but it's not as big as you would think because people normally don't. Aside from Brandon Sanderson, people normally don't follow the authors they read, I think, that closely.
He's really found a way to basically curate the market to himself. I don't know how he did it. It's such an anomaly. Like him, Stephen King had it a little bit there, but before he went fucking like a wackadoo. Imagine having all that clout and just completely like shitting on it, which is hard. Like authors, you know, for people like them, you would think like that's the dream. You have this army load of fans who just always want to buy your work, no matter what you release. You could do a new series, they'll buy it. You could do a sequel book to your older series, they'll buy it. You literally can't go wrong. And they have that dream of like, I can live off my work. That's my hobby. That's my passion. So to see someone like Stephen King completely just like alienate most of his audience when he's doing this stuff and what he's saying on social media is it's just so cringe. Like there's people that would kill for these positions, you know?
Yep. Well, I think social media was a mistake. I miss the days when famous people had handlers. You know, people be like, no, you're not going to say this on public TV. Go back to your mansion and go be weird there. You've got an image to protect. Of course, it's probably good we know what these people are now. Like we would have like the whole Diddy thing. We would have never known about that without social media.
Yeah. There was another thing that John A. Douglas, right? The guy who does the Black Crown book.
Yeah.
So he posted a video that actually went pretty viral about the novel scene. Let's say big box retailers like Walmart, Target, places like that, only having like books that are just generally geared towards females, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's generally true? If you were going to like a store, they only just have books for women, actually?
Let me think. When was the last time I actually went into a bookstore? I went into a Barnes & Noble recently, but that's because I was going Christmas shopping and I had to walk through it to get in the mall. I mean,
the last anything there that you wanted to get, even when you went through it?
I mean, I briefly went by the manga section and thought, I could really finish filling out my collection, but aside from that, like half the books they had on display were like the ACOTAR series, which I already read the first book of. I do not recommend. It's more romantasy trash. But it's not as bad as some. Like I just finished the third Lightlark book, and oh my gosh, the term aggressively mediocre comes to mind. Like, are you familiar with the Lightlark series at all?
No.
So,
what was the last book I even attempted to read? Because I'm not the biggest like novel guy because I'm black and CNN says we can't read. So I choose to live up my life in stereotypes, actually. Watermelon and fried chicken, great drink.
Now, you see, my girl, I dated a girl for 10 years who would disagree because about 10 years. She borrowed a lot of my books heavily, and she read a lot. She also took my first 2 seasons of Yu Yu Hakusho, and I never got them back. So,
of course you didn't, because that's just how that works.
Well, we dated for nearly a decade. I can't feel too bad about that.
Good God, man. Like, how do you do it sometimes? Like, for me, the reason why I have more comic books and graphic novels that are in that format, because I feel like I could visualize and see what's going on more effectively. It feels like every time when I read a book, I'm more tempted to like put it down and get bored since it's just words. I don't know how people do it, honestly.
See, the problem is most people don't have access to actually well-written books. Like a lot of these mainstream books are pretty terrible at making an image, making you follow along.
Yeah.
In fact, a lot of the really popular stuff you'd pick up in the bookstore, most of them aren't really that well written, at least in the making you see what's going on, sucking you into the story. There are a handful of books that are really good with that. But the thing is, it's just like anything else. Like if you were reading a comic about something you didn't care about, you probably wouldn't be interested in the comic either. But with books, I think the problem is people have gotten away from the better way of writing, like some of the Hemingway methods, and keeping it short, keeping it to what's necessary to the story. Don't add too many things that don't need to be there. Don't exposition dump on people. People want to enjoy a story the same way you enjoy a movie. The difference is, in a good book, you're seeing it through the character's eyes. You're knowing the thoughts that are going into it. You're getting more detail than you could get in the actual movie. But it's just finding those good books. And that's one of the things I try to do with my channel, because there's so few of them.
Because I remember you said that last time you were on for my podcast, I did not get retconned for my own doing, actually. I remember I distinctly went to my Walmart to check out our book section. And now our book section there at this Walmart is pretty bad, actually, because most of the time it's different stuff each time I go. And I'll try to look at something. I pulled down one book. I forgot the name of it and who the author was. But I pulled it down. It looked good from the cover art. It looked good from how the hardcover felt. Picked it up and I was like, nah. For some reason, like all of them are like that though. Like they don't stock our manga books too much. But and to be fair, I don't think it's that. Most of the time, manga and like stuff that we would get here is sold out so quickly. Honestly, like it's so scarce at mine. So I try to look at like the novel section, and they'll have like these at like some of your big box stores where you live. Do you have like do they have like these bins where they try to sell like books for like $5 or anything? I try to say like, if I can find some gems there, but nothing there really interests me actually. Like, sorry, nothing there interests me actually.
I mean, not so much with books. The weird thing about Appalachia is there are a lot of people here who read. It's just with the internet and being able to order your books, and we actually used to have a whole bunch of secondhand bookstores because people just like, and some of them had some really valuable books in them. But after several recessions, and this area has never been exactly rich, and that housing market and property value thing hit us pretty hard too. So a lot of that stuff shut down. But no, there's a lot of readers here. There's actually a lot of really well off people who live in the area because land for them was pretty cheap. But the thing is, you don't see books. There are books at our Walmart, but they don't have them in bins. They only stock like the big top sellers.
Oh yeah, yeah. Damn, man. Because the whole traditional publishing wing you were talking about earlier, people
Mm-hmm.
gotta just keep this in mind when they're getting all those books and ordering all those books. Like let's say they order maybe like 200 copies of that book. That doesn't even mean they sell all 200 copies of those books. They're only gonna put out like 5 on a shelf and then have someone restock it if that
Mm-hmm.
book potentially sells out. And some of the times I've gone to my local Walmart. I've seen some of the same books that have been there for the past 2 years still be freshly stocked, not sold.
Well, they try to keep that stuff stocked up, but if it wasn't selling, they wouldn't be restocking it. Like Walmart
That's true.
turns that stuff over real quick.
Yeah.
People are buying them, but I think the advent of things like the e-reader and being able to read books on your phone and ebooks and all that stuff, I think they've done a real number on the publishing industry
Mm,
because like it's so easy to publish a book. Like if you've got your manuscript done, once you like, I could, if you got $1,000, that's like editor, cover art, all of. I know it
yeah.
sounds like a lot,
Yeah.
but if you got $1,000 for for good cover art, to get somebody to edit it, and you might be able to squeeze a proofreader in there, you can publish a book, no problem. Like the actual act of publishing a book is practically nothing.
Hmm.
But if you want something quality, like that's been edited, and editing's one of those things like cleaning your bathroom, people only notice if you didn't do it.
Oh,
Um,
that's true. I agree. Yeah.
but technically, you can. I've not seen people do it. You can publish something that's been unedited. Like Amazon will let you publish anything, and it doesn't cost you a dime.
Hmm.
But if you're going indie, you have to do the editor. And then please, everybody who's doing your book, get an editor. Get
Yeah.
two.
That's the number one thing I hear is that people will kind of like make to wanting to get the book done and get it finally out there because they're at that last hurdle. They just can't wait to get it out there. They
Hmm.
just won't get an editor because they'll feel like, oh, I could just edit it myself and save some money. But what about all the money that you lost that if people do read that, they just throw it in the trash or put it down and not finish it because you didn't hire that editor, you know?
So people will forgive some typos. People will
Oh,
forgive
yeah.
some errors, uh, but there's a threshold.
Mhm.
Like you don't want, and I'm discovering now that I'm probably not only going to just have an editor, I need to have a separate proofreader,
Mm.
just somebody to give that book that all important third look.
Mhm.
Yeah, just for minor errors like, oh, this name is wrong here. Oh, this is misspelled. This name is missing the E at the end. Things
Mhm.
like that. It's just minor things, but they kind of add to it because any little mistake like that will take you out of the book. And the trick to writing a good book is to have, it's like with a good video game. You want them to sit down and begin it and not look at the clock until they're way too in or
Yeah, that's true.
the,
Yeah. You want them
or
to,
the,
in essence, what you're saying, you want that reader or watcher to be so lost in what they just got, it just consumes them and time doesn't matter, actually.
or to paraphrase John Gardner, who was he was a fairly popular author, I think.
Mhm.
He wrote a book on it. He said something along the lines of the book should be like a continuous, vivid daydream. It's like, and anything that pulls people out of that is an anathema to your book.
So not Greta Gerwig's Chronicles of Narnia movie that she's gonna do because right
Yeah.
when she said it's gonna be a new take, I was like, yeah, I'm done. Give me the rope. I heard
like,
that too much. I'm not being tricked this time. I learned.
I stopped watching I think I stopped really going to the movies after I want to say the last Lord of the Rings movie.
Mhm.
And like I've gone to a few. Like I went and saw the Joker movie because I was there. I saw the second Deadpool movie in theaters because I was playing hooky that day.
How dare you?
I mean, we just got a movie theater that serves alcohol, so why wouldn't I?
Oh my god, man. That second Deadpool movie, holy shit. I will say this. I never saw the first one. I've only seen the second and the third one. The second one, the story is just I realized with Deadpool, the story is nonsense when it comes to people. All they care about is just the humor and the jokes. That's it.
Yep. But it was a good book. It was a good movie. The third one wasn't too bad either. I liked the Deadpool Wolverine.
Oh, you like Deadpool
movie.
Wolverine? Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. I did go see that because I had the day off and, been doing better with money wise. So, hey, why not? Got to treat yourself sometimes.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would never have expected this going into Deadpool Wolverine that we were going to get like the best MCU opening scene of like NYC bye. Really? It's like, okay, didn't expect that. But I feel like that's why a lot of people just gravitated towards watching that movie, because even people knew story had some holes here and there. You were having such a good time with it, And I think that's what ultimately can sometimes matter more than like you have all these like directors sometimes of like all the cinema and the store and blah, blah. Like the Sonic movies are a good example of that. People know that there's it's not gonna be like the greatest written cinema ever, but that's not what most people are checking for. Most people just go under to just have a good time and just be entertained, right?
Yeah,
that's what the average person wants.
I'll give them credit. Those Sonic movies weren't that bad. I mean, they're not something you would be like, oh, this is a cinematic masterpiece, but they're meant to be for kids.
Oh, you shut your mouth. That's Morbius is a cinematic masterpiece.
But there's actually a rule to writing, and I think it applies to movies as well. It's like all rules go out the window for comedy. Like if something's meant to be funny, you can break the rules. You can have plot holes so long as it's funny first. That's actually one of the things I noticed with Terry Pratchett, who's quickly becoming one of my favorite authors. Have you heard of him?
Okay.
Terry Pratchett. He does the Discworld series, or he did the Discworld series. He's dead now, but
he's dead. Okay,
yeah, he's been
on that.
Well, he wrote like I think there's 40 of them, but it's just meant to be a comedy fantasy series. But it puts the comedy first and the fantasy second. So like one of the main characters, Rincewind, who's a wizard who got a spell of creation stuck in his head. Now he can't learn any other spells, but he can't cast that spell either. So he's a wizard who can't cast spells. But he's one of the main characters. And honestly, I think he's one of the best characters out of almost any book I've ever read, just because he feels very relatable because all this bad stuff happens to him. Like there's a part in the books where he gets stuck on a tree, or he gets stuck in a tree, and below him are a bunch of wolves, and he looks up and he sees a snake coming towards him. And he thinks to himself, I wonder if it's poisonous, before immediately saying, well, that's a stupid thought. Of course it's poisonous.
There was one recently for a movie. It was It Ends With Us. It starred Blake Lively. It was from the author Colleen Hoover, because her book kind of like, I guess people say the movie like glorified domestic violence or whatever. And I haven't read the book yet, but it's so crazy. But people have to remember, women are attracted to some very odd things. Women are actually attracted to serial killers for some reason. So I'm not surprised that women bought a book that had domestic violence as a story element in a book. I'm not surprised by that at all. Not even close.
So women are actually, and there have been studies on this, women are the number one consumers of violent adult material.
I believe it. Yep.
But actually, I'm doing so I've got a book that I ordered. It's actually from the 1890s, called The Art of Courtship, which talks about dating and all that stuff, like how it's supposed to go and how it went back then. Because I'm so tired of seeing really terrible romances in all these books I'm reading. So like, okay, we're going to go over some of these basic rules that they established back when people talked to each other.
People used to talk to each other?
Back
before there wasn't the internet that made this all possible.
Yeah, but back in the days when you might know 100 people in your entire life.
Good God, man.
But no, there was actually a study about women liking violence. And now this isn't true of all women, just like, not all men are attracted to the same type of woman. But I think it has to do with some kind of evolutionary thing where this guy, like, yeah, he's a murderer, but, he's the one who's winning. Like apparently there's some studies out there, and don't cite me on this, that say women actually like men who are able to kill, basically.
Mm.
Like it's some kind of survival thing. It's like, yeah, he might be horrible, but if there's a fight, he's going to be the one who wins. He'll be able to provide.
So like essentially from similar stuff that I've read as you have, I think the general consensus that they don't ever talk about is that women prefer seeking like thrill seeking in their life. They prefer that thrill. That's the reason why they get with guys that are quote unquote not good for them, because they like the thrill of this guy being completely different than the other one. It's like it's something about them. They just always do that, because you always question your life. If this guy is bad for you, you leave that guy and you get another guy that's the same as the other guy, which is bad for her. Why does she keep doing it? You must actually like the thrill of it.
There's actually another explanation as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that makes women not so dissimilar from men. It's not so much that they like the thrill. It's that it's kind of a form of entertainment. It's the same reason women go for funny guys or guys who are really good talkers, who can persuade other people, who are, rich guys who can take them here and there. Mm-hmm. Just like men, like with our video games, we like some kind of spectacle in our life. And as for the men they keep going for, like say they jump from bad guy to bad guy to bad guy, a lot of that could also be chalked up to just who's around them. If they're typically around bad people all the time, that's probably going to be who they're going to date. Whereas if you surround yourself with better people, you're probably going to date better people. It's like you don't go looking for a wife who's not an alcoholic in a bar. You have to. It could be that, and I'm not saying this is true of all women, because some women do seek out bad men, just like some men seek out bad women. It might just be the options that she's presented with at the time. It's like in hiring. Sometimes you don't always get the best candidates. Sometimes you get who you get.
But what's different, man, is that with women, they have more options generally than guys like me and you, or most guys. Women themselves, since they're like I guess they say the gatekeepers of sex to a certain degree, they have plenty of options. Even the ugliest of women will have more options than men, but they choose to just go with the most dangerous scenario possible. And then they'll even tell certain guys like, "Oh, I left you because you were boring." And it's like, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna go fucking pull a hit off on a guy in a movie or something. I'm sorry,
That's true to an extent, but you also have to realize that these are the guys who are almost always there. They're the ones going out looking for them. They're it might not seem like it, but they're putting in the time. I talked to one of my friends who always has a girlfriend, and I kind of examined a little bit about how he works. He never just goes and picks them up. It's never an immediate thing. Most of these relationships take about a month or two to mature. Most of the time, it's because there's nobody else any better than them hanging around these girls. Most of the guys, I went and talked to the guys that I know who don't have girlfriends. And what are they doing with most of their time? They're sitting at home. They're not out there being around these people. There's a scientific term called perpiquity. And it just refers to how often you're in touch with somebody. How often do you talk?
Oh, I know you're going to say. Yeah. So depending on the amount of people around you, you can pick the litter out of the best possible candidates. But if you have less possible good candidates, then you get the lesser quality of them.
Well, it's more, you'll like somebody who's more familiar to you.
Yeah, some sort of comfortability. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, that's not to say there aren't going to be other aspects that are going to play into that. But it has been proven that women will find men who they initially didn't find attractive more attractive the longer they spend time with them, the more they get to know them. We're so used to this tender culture where we're just learning oh, this person's attractive, this person's not attractive. We're just flipping them left and right. And we're getting that 5-second mentality. But, if you spend time around somebody who's attractive, but they're a complete loser and they have nothing, they're always borrowing money, and somebody who's kind of mid, but, they're fun to be around, they tell funny jokes, they have an interesting life, you're going to probably go towards the mid because the attractive one's too much of a pain to deal with. It's you have to have some time to let there be some comparison there. I know a lot of really attractive guys who have girlfriends, but they don't keep them for more than a month or two because the girl gets to know him. They know they live at home. They know they don't clean themselves. They can't hold down a job. And then the girls leave. But these are the guys who are good at talking. They went out and learned how to talk to women. They just never learned how to keep a woman. So in a
Hmm.
lot of ways, and I hate to say it like this, it could just be a skill and time issue for a lot of people. But it might also be, I'm not saying some people aren't choosy, but sometimes, again, you got to get out there and you got to hunt. Like, you're not going to catch any deer that you don't go out looking for. So, and I have to
No,
take it. Yeah.
no, I agree with you. I think there's this subset of guys out there that for some reason don't go out and interact with women and then have a problem that they don't have a partner. But that's the point of life though. If you don't ever like interact with women, yeah, you're not going to get all of them. And
Mm-hmm.
women, like we just explained earlier, are going to have better options than you probably, but that doesn't mean you just don't try, you know?
And keep in mind, you don't want to like aggressively go after a woman. Sometimes you just need to be in the group.
So don't be
And
P. Diddy.
yeah, don't be P. Diddy. Like, just kind of be casual about it. Be friendly with everybody,
Hmm.
because the actions you do, the things that you do, and how you participate in the group is kind of part of the addition.
Yes.
She's not going to like you just because you dropped this line or because you have this car. If you're part of this group with other people, she's going to see how you act all the time, how you act around the other people. Can you make other people laugh? Are you a dependable person? Not everybody's the shallow, like the internet has ruined people in a way that we see all these really shallow people and the absolute worst people who get spread around the internet. And we think everybody's like that. And they're not. There's a lot of people who are, they wouldn't be on the internet otherwise. But there's just as many women out there looking at some of this stuff. It's like, can I find a guy who actually has a job who's not a loser? And I think one of the problems a lot of guys like us, I'm assuming you have a busy day with your work too.
Yeah.
We get, we have say we have a 50, 60 hour week. You don't want to go do anything after that. You want to sit at home, maybe play a game, have something to eat, and go to bed. And I think one of the problems that we have is we need to get out there where people are. And it's not just going to where the women are. You have to go to where people who know the women are.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I recently started attending a new church because I needed to get a good social group. I need to have that practice at being social because I have to deal with a lot of people. But, a lot of the people there, they're talking about introducing me to this person at this job or this, you're developing connections.
Mm-hmm.
And those people be like, hey, I know this person. They're single. They seem like that might be a good match. I know that's the TV trope, but talking with people, that seems to be how a lot of the the most successful marriages I've met have gotten started. It was from a friend group. They got out there and networked.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just 1,000 different things going on at one time.
The same thing with content creation too,
Yeah.
where you like people always ask me how I can have these episodes weekly, how I can have these many podcasts throughout the years that go on these many episodes. You just have to kind of go out there, even on the internet, and just talk to people, see who kind of you can have on shows, who you can not like align with per se, someone that can kind of get what you're going for, and then kind of bring their own personality there too. And it's not always going to work. There's always trial and error, but you have to be able to just do it and kind of like understand you're going to have some setbacks there. It's not always going to be rainbows and sunshines. I think that's the problem with the world now. People think that if they just do something, it's just supposed to be rainbows and sunshines. It's like, it's not. That's the point of life. Life's always going to be a hard thing. It's like people had it way harder than us growing up. Like, I'm talking like in the 1800s, you said, before that, way before. People were like, they had no internet, no nothing in life. They just kind of made houses out of just fucking bricks and shit,
I love seeing some of those houses from the 1800s. Like, back before we had internet and television to distract us, they made some awesome stuff. Like, have you seen there's a meme that goes around on Twitter that shows like the rain gutter from modern day versus the rain gutter from the 1900s. And like the 1900s one is gilded and it's got like a little head at the end and it's all ornate. And the one from today is just a pipe with a rusted band across it. We kind of lost. Now, don't get me wrong. I love the internet. I'm never going to get rid of the internet, but we kind of lost. We lost the ambition to do other things. Now it's coming back. You're seeing a lot of people on like YouTube and all these other places making stuff now. They're showing, here's how I grow a garden. Here's this cool sword I make. Here's this cool other thing I did. We're getting back into that. And I'd like to keep the internet like that. But yeah, like you were saying, it's sometimes it's just a matter of getting out there. Like
Hmm.
sometimes you gotta. I think a lot of people spend too much time complaining and not enough time getting out there and doing something.
That, and I think a lot of people just spend too much time in their own head or
Hmm.
trying to think that if they do finally do it, they're worrying about all these different intangibles that you can kind of tackle as you get along with something. Like, I didn't know a lot about certain things about computers, how audio works, all this stuff until I just kept doing it. So when I had a
Hmm.
hurdle, I made a struggle on it for a few days, but I eventually got it down and got over it. People
You may.
were worrying about all these different intangibles so much, and it's like, if you're gonna worry about that much stuff, then I guess you'll never do it. Then, you know.
I found something similar to that. It was a weird source of inspiration. So I was doing my run and I ran across this video of a high end escort.
Mm-hmm.
And she was, and I'm going to try to keep it PG for YouTube. She was talking about how most people in her profession try to disconnect when they are doing their job.
Mm-hmm.
And she said she took it upon herself to be present in the moment, to be in her body in the action. And she said that improved things so much and it made her much more popular at her job. Now, I'm not advocating people do her profession, but maybe people need to spend more time in their body, in the present, and experience what they're
Mm-hmm.
doing rather than spending all their time in their head. Because the scenario, like you can concoct all sorts of crazy things in your head and you're going to hurt your feelings quite often with weird scenarios. But, be present in your body, feel what your body's feeling, go out there and do stuff to actually experience it.
Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot of young men, I've finally been starting to wake up and realize, no, that's what you're supposed to do as men. Like,
Yep.
people, like, there was a group period in time, you remember, man, where a dude just kept saying, I'm sad, I'm depressed. It's like, dude, oh my God, if you're sad and depressed, do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do something. Like, as men, the way to get over sadness or feeling down, which you're going to feel down and sad at some points. That's just how humans work, right? But
Yep.
if you put your effort into something, as far as like any creative outlet, I promise you, you will feel way better. And it takes that frustration and sadness and puts on something else that you have a goal for. Like people always say, go to the gym. And
Yep.
the reason why going to the gym is very important, as the reason why people bring it up, is because you're able to not only channel that energy and that stress on something else and then put yourself toward a goal, which would inherently in the long run make you less sad, make you feel good about yourself. A lot of
Yep.
guys just don't get that though. It's literally, we are built to work and do stuff. You can't
Yep.
rewire men at this point. It's just what if you believe in God, as he kind of put us on this earth to do his work. Like women are kind of supposed to just have kids and be mothers, kind of their
Well,
thing.
well, women used to work too. I think one of the big problems we have in modernity. So when they say women were the homemakers, that doesn't just mean like, oh, they clean the house and cook the food. No, tending the house was a big responsibility because like back in the days of crofters and stuff, like they took care of a lot of growing of the food. They'd work out in the fields just like the men would.
Yeah,
Washing
yeah.
clothes was an all day thing. And then we started making all these things because women's work was pretty grueling. Like, yeah, we're out there digging holes and stuff, but men love
Mm-hmm.
their wives and they wanted to make their lives easier. So they started making things like washing machines and dishwashers and all these things to make their jobs easier. But that also took their work away. And women, a lot like men, get a lot of joy out of their work. Like women, just like men, want to feel proud of the things they do, not just having kids. Like fathers and mothers both love their kids. They're both proud of their kids. But women like to feel important too. They like to feel that their work is appreciated. And I think one of the worst things we did, and don't take this the wrong way, what was take away their kind of purpose, like the things that they could do and say, I did this. I'm proud of this. I like grew all the stuff to make this delicious meal all myself. I'm doing better. I'm doing this better than Becky down the street. Look at the size of this vegetable I grew. It's so much better than what she did. Humans naturally like to compete. It's like there was the study that showed
Yeah.
that women are just as violent as men, but their violence is on a different level. Like they're more socially violent. Like they'll do aggressive acts, like more psychological stuff, more scarring and ostracizing. Whereas men will beat each other up and then will be the best of friends, or at least respect each other. But in a lot, men and women are very different, but in a lot of ways we're the same. Like
Mhm.
women, just like men, want to feel appreciated. And back before, television and all these modern appliances, when you just had your family and you spent heck, there back in the days when like husband and wife worked in the same business, you know, for the longest time, women were the ones that ran the tills. Like they kept the accounts because women, like, doing numbers was, if I remember correctly, don't quote me on this because this comes from a couple books and even books can be wrong. Women were taught to do the figures because they ran the household. They would do the shopping because they did the haggling. They would run the books because they managed the money. Like the
Yeah.
husband, yeah, he made the money, but if he wanted any money, he had to
Yeah.
go to his wife.
Yeah, and it's those traditional values of like having a actual legitimate partnership, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But now, well, they've told women, hey, you just gotta just do everything yourself, and you gotta be the CEO and all that stuff. And I remember I was watching one of those like YouTube videos where they have like the actual CEO women or women that have all this money now, and some of them
Mm-hmm.
have said it's it's like, yeah, it's good to be able to like financially support yourself and have no money problems to a certain degree. But one of them distinctly said, hey, I would love to basically have a man offset some of these burdens of like emotion, because women at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day are emotional more than we are. It's just kind of how they're built, like even from biblical structure, like God created Eve because Adam was lonely. It's kind of how it worked.
Well, men and women are two halves of the same whole. We're meant to complement each other.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, like, men are the driving force, but women are the force that goes around. So, one of the things that having a wife is supposed to help, because men, we're a bit more socially blind. Like, we're easier to manipulate by nature. Now, there are men who learn not to be. But one of the things that women are good for is taking another look at the situation. Like, men tend to look at a problem directly on. It's like, okay, this is a problem. I need to fix it. Women will sometimes look at a social situation like, oh, this person's trying to manipulate my husband,
Mm-hmm.
or this person's trying to manipulate my child. They kind of look out for it used to be that men would be the direct aggressive thing, like protect from the people, and women would protect their families and social situations
Mm-hmm.
because they were the ones that kept the society together. Like when I can't remember which country this was. When it used to be when a country would invade another country and they wanted the society to behave like a conquered society, they would take some of the men and punish them in front of the women. And the reason was the women would keep their men in check, because if the men tried to rebel, the women would be like, no, don't go do it. I don't want you to die. I remember what I saw. Women hold the society together. The women are the ones that kind of act as the check on their men because they're the neck that turns the head.
Mm-hmm.
It's I don't know how to, about the best way I can phrase is they're going to see things men can't, and men are going to see things women can't.
Yeah, and you know what's crazy? As everyone knows, I shit on modern women so hard because I do believe they're generally fucking stupid. But I'm glad they have those perspectives to a certain degree, so we can analyze and understand where the fuck did that come from, so we know to never do that ever again. Because they were lied to. They were told that they don't need a man, they could do all the things themselves, but completely neglecting that women themselves are emotional, and that's they thrive off touching and all that other stuff. So that when they got all this stuff, they feel empty. Imagine like being that high up in a job and having all that money and you feel empty. That's the worst. That's actually the worst thing possible because you don't feel complete at that point.
To an extent, we were all lied to.
Yeah.
Like,
are you saying Obama wasn't a bad guy? Oh, damn, good Lord.
I generally hate all politicians. I don't care.
Are you saying BLM was a scam? Okay, now you're really taking it.
I'm not saying it was a scam. I'm just saying I made some good money off some stocks.
Oh no, man.
I am not asking. It's like I'm either asking for an end to corruption or more opportunity to participate in it. I'm kidding. No, I can't. I'm actually kidding. I have security clearance. I can't lose it by saying that.
Good gosh, man. Yeah, I just wish people would choose to analyze things more when they're told certain things, but just that's not how humans are going to function. I guess from a certain generation, or even just a little bit of people from like how we grew up a little bit, just they've been so propaganda is such a very clear, distinctive reason why a lot of people think the way they do, and it's so hard to unravel and unwind all that stuff. And you could factually prove them wrong. Doesn't matter because they believe what's on the TV, and it's like, wow, okay.
Well,
we're starting on the back foot.
Nobody has the ability to learn everything. And no matter who you are, somebody's always going to be able to pull something over on you. So the best thing you can do is just become as knowledgeable in what you need to survive and what you enjoy as you possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're never going to learn anything. You don't have the time to. A jack of all trades is a master of none. So really all you can do is look out for yourself the best you can and try to surround yourself with people who complement what you have. And that used to be community. And I think the solution to most of these problems is just to find yourself a community.
Like the whole homeschool thing. Like,
Yeah.
Back in the day for homeschool, it was treated as if like you're going to keep your kid socially and not they're going to be socially awkward. You hear all these horror stories about public school. It's like, do you really want to send your kid to a public school? Is the social interaction value that high to the point where, you want potentially bad things to happen to them? I'm not saying all public schools are like that, but this notion that it was such a bad thing because you were keeping your kid away from other kids is like, I guess those people were onto something back then. Good Lord.
Oh, you kind of are now to like, we're a nation that was formed on rebellion. Like we're a nation of independent individuals. And I think it would be best if we fostered that. I think we should become, a little bit more atomized because everything's so homogenous now. Like no matter where you go, there's a McDonald's, there's an Outback, there's like all the same restaurants everywhere you go, all the same stores everywhere you go. Almost anything that made anywhere unique in this country is gone. Like even the accents that used to be across this country are pretty much gone. Like the Midwesterns, like they used to say like the don't you know and all that stuff all the time. And, California accents used to be different from New York accents, but thanks to TV and the internet, heck, the accents are even dying out across nations.
Oh, God, man. And with the whole recent election that we just had, people realized that you actually have more power than you do,
Oh, yeah.
because over time, I'm pretty sure this, voting has just gone up and up over time. It was actually a fairly not popular thing the media made it out to be because the actual voting numbers have gone up in record in mass over the last 2-3 elections we've actually had. Yep. And it shows people your opinion does somewhat matter. I mean, the whole world basically said, no, fuck Kamala Harris. At least our nation did. We basically said, get the hell out of here. We don't like you.
So when I was younger, like I started getting involved in politics when I was about 18 years old. But when I was younger, I made the mistake of wishing that politics would be a bit more bloodthirsty. And now after watching this last election, I'm like, can we go back to like it being calmer? I'm kind of tired of everything being political. I want to be able to joke about stupid stuff again. Like I remember back when you could make a joke about virtually anything.
Anything. Yeah.
Like I used to have a friend who was a gay redneck drug dealer. Nobody, you didn't mess with the dude.
That's a struggle in life. A gay redneck drug dealer.
So the thing is, Hollywood has made people have this impression that, places like the South and like Appalachia are like these really intolerant places. And they're not. It's like, so long as you come in and show people respect and don't try to do weird stuff with their kids, people will be perfectly fine with you regardless of what you do. As these people who come in and act really arrogant and try to impose all their beliefs and their structures on how things work around here, they're the ones that have problems. And they're not having a problem because of what they like or who they like. They're having a problem because they're basically an asshole.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but we're talking about Hollywood, and that's what Hollywood's run by. So
that's the thing is, we got to this point where you can't, like, it was just crazy that you couldn't joke about anything. And someone was like, what is your intention behind this joke? Bro, I'm just fucking joking. You're supposed to move on. Like, in real life, that will still be the case most of the time. But on the internet, it would be like, man, if you made a black joke and 10 years ago on old Twitter and they found out about it, you were just like fired or canceled. It's like, what?
Most of the black jokes I know came from black people. So,
right? Remember, black people can't be racist, man. You remember that?
I don't know. I've heard some savage things. Woohoo! Like, I'm not going to say them because you want to keep your channel, but woohoo!
God, yeah. Black people can be some of those racist people I've ever met in my entire life. Some of those, like, just man, the way they were treating like just nerds, like they'll say like you need to talk. Why do you try to sound white? Like what the fuck? Like crazy things,
So the craziest. So I took a part-time job a couple years ago working for a distribution center, and they had a bunch of young kids there unpacking trucks, and I saw one there, and he was a ginger, but I had to do a double take because when I first saw him, I thought, "Is this guy black?" And I got close to him. I talked to him. I was like, "Dude, is like your grandfather black or something?" He's like, "Yeah." It's like, "How'd you know?" It's like, because you've got the nose, you've got the hair, but it's flaming red, and he was whiter than I am, but like he had some of the features, and I noticed that like 75% of the people there were just like that. Like you could, it's not some, and I hear people saying, like, "Oh, the browning of America." Is like, no, no, no. It's the bleaching of everybody else. Because like you come here, and I remember when I was a kid, there was this guy who lived in this apartment complex we lived in. His name was Bear. That's what we called him. He was the blackest man I've ever seen in my life. And I mean, like color wise, the way he talked, like you could hear him talking in his house to himself. He had that stereotypically like really loud voice. That's just how he sung jazz. But he was the most, you don't see those kinds of tones anymore. Like it's been mixed so much, you barely see that anymore, especially in just like middle America. Like everybody's just kind of blending together, which does happen over time. It's like, heck, I've got a cousin. I think he's half black, but people think he's Mexican because he has almost no pigment left.
The other thing you brought up earlier about gaming is, have you seen a lot of the gaming controversies that have happened? I feel like every day something's happened, whether it's Grand Theft Auto, Dragon Age, fucking Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. What's crazy is that a lot of people were pushing Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, which is Budokai Tenkaichi 4, for that game to lose nearly 80% of its player base. I was like, and then I didn't see the typical people report on it though. It's like, well, that's. I mean, people were praising it when it sold a lot of units, but if it loses half if Dragon Age, any of the other games lost half its player base, which they did, that did happen. They talked about it in video form. I don't really recall most people even talking about Dragon Ball Sparking Zero losing almost all of its player base. That's crazy,
Dude, 2024 has been such a crazy year. I'm surprised any story has stuck in the news for as long as it has. Like you remember at the beginning of the year where they found all those tunnels under that synagogue in New York?
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
It was like, what happened to that story? They removed a bloody mattress from it. Nobody talks about it.
Oh no.
But this year has just been full of that stuff. It's like every time I turn on the news, it's like this year has been that year where any week could have had a story that would have made the year. But, and it's like you said, like Sparkling Zero, it lost half its player base. Well, so did like 6 other games this year.
Dustborn only has like 2 players, probably the people who made the game.
We saw the biggest gaming failure this year in Concord in like
I remember that,
gaming history.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of industries are, hell, we've practically seen the collapse of Hollywood. Like all these major industries are collapsing. And it's hard to, there's just too much news to talk about this year. I'm looking for,
I didn't even keep up with all of it. Like Concord basically was Sony's Overwatch, only for basically, I don't know who did Marvel Rivals. When Marvel Rivals came out and basically did everything that Concord wanted to do.
that's so because they won because they put attractive women in it. I'm going to say that right now because
and they made it free.
And they made it free. Yeah. Well, I mean, hero shooters they're not a genre I've ever gotten into, but I do appreciate that we're getting attractive people back in video games. Like some of the things I've seen, but I don't get time to play as many games as I used to. I still want to finish Elden Ring.
I told people, like, I love video games. Like I have a Switch OLED. I have a PS4. I'm working on getting a PS5 or an Xbox Series X soon. One of them. I love gaming. I truly do love it. I've been gaming my entire life. It's just to see all this stuff happening with games now is just crazy. Every single day something popping up. And then people that are apparently on one side fighting over like who's gonna take like that moral stance first. And it's like, I don't do things based off your morals. What the fuck? It's like that random guy in the friend group who always has to say that. They're like, hey guys, how do you guys think about the life we have? It's like, bro, No, what are you doing here? It's just you. It's a you problem you got there. It's always that one guy. That says we have to be better in the room, and we have to put the adults in, and we have to think about what we're doing. It's like,
No, we need to go back to the scary movie era where
yeah,
we had absolutely horrific, irreverent comedy. Like that scene in, was it the second scary movie where that clown drags that guy under the bed and then the guy drags the clown under the bed? Do you remember that scene? He ain't used
one, right?
I think it was 2 because it was the gay dude that the clown pulled under the bed, and then the clown tried to escape, and then the guy pulled him under the bed, not using his hands or feet. If you
What
get
about
what I
the
mean.
one where he was like, "Hey, I'm gay." They were playing off of the first Scream movie. It's like, "Hey, I'm gay." It's like, bro, holy shit! And they want to do a scary movie 6, I think, with the Wayans brothers again. It's like they just have no ideas anymore. Just circling the drain. Literally, just nothing good.
We didn't know how good we had it in the early 2000s. We really didn't.
God. What was that Thanos quote in fucking Endgame? What did it lead you? Back to me. Yeah.
I think we will recover. I think a lot of companies are starting to realize, hey, we have to pay a mortgage. We might have to start making crap people like again. But you got a lot of people out here with a lot of good ideas. Hopefully, they'll actually get to make something.
Mm-hmm.
I heard there's going to be that Amazon's going to do the 40K series.
I just see that. Yeah. We haven't had, speaking another story that just comes and goes randomly. So the whole Warhammer show series that's going to be involving with Henry Cavill, but we knew that already. It's great. That story got circled 3 times. Like nothing else has been announced about it other than just Henry Cavill is going to be with Warhammer.
Well, now it apparently is official. There also has been, I think, an announcement that Games Workshop basically handed over all the rights. Like Amazon can not only make any show or movie they want based in the Warhammer universe, but they can sell merchandise for it. And it's like that's a lot to hand off for a franchise that you've had this long. And after what Amazon did to Rings of Power, I don't know if I'd want to, hand over that much control to them. But I don't know. I like the Warhammer 40K genre, but we'll see how that holds up after Amazon makes their show. I'm hoping they let Henry Cavill just have at it. Just like, if this is your baby, go get it and let him make it as true as he wants.
But hey, man, you got to have Mr. Beast shows, right? That Mr. Beast show that apparently had all these like lawsuits that are probably just going to be paid off. Let's be honest here, guys. None of that stuff's going to trial. They're just going to pay people off. They'll be like, "Hey, here's $2 million. Shut up. Don't say anything. NDA. Say something. You're going to go to jail." Like the chance of that happening is out of this world. Not happening. There's no way.
I don't know. I know that he makes that sawdust chocolate. So
apparently his friend Chris made a lot of chocolate too, giving himself just a lot of shit. Oh my god, man, that story. People were talking about Dr. Disrespect and everything, and Dr. Disrespect did a really weird thing what that he mentioned in that fucking thread that he posted that he deleted. And people were like, "But Chris Tyson did worse." It's like, guys, both these guys are probably just pieces of shit. Why is it a competition? Like one guy said he talked to a minor inappropriately. We don't even know the girl's age. She could be 14, she could have been 15. Doesn't matter. And people say, "Oh, she was 17." That's never been confirmed at all. That's just something people just made up.
It's if you get to 1 million YouTube subs, you better really watch yourself because someone's going to be gunning for you, or you're going to do something really stupid. I think the problem is a lot of these people got way too much fame way too fast, and they just don't know how to deal with it. And again, I'm advocating bring back the handlers. Bring back that one guy with common sense to say, no, you're not going to that party with P. Diddy. All these other guys are getting in trouble. You're staying home. Somebody to like curtail the worst aspects. Just that friend, you hire that friend to stick around. It's like, this is a dumb idea. You're not doing that. So somebody smack your hand and say, no, you're not taking that crack pipe.
What did you think? What did you think about him joining Rumble? You're not even on Rumble yourself. You're just only on YouTube and X, I think, right?
No, I've got a Rumble channel.
Okay, you just post the same content you have on YouTube, right?
Yep. Mostly. I try to. Rumble's its user interface is a little bit more difficult to use.
It's really wonky, is it not? Like they need to update that website a lot. Like instead of spending all this much money on like streamers like Dr. Disrespect, could we get some actual money and infrastructure put into like the actual website, please?
I would like. I can't even figure out how their tag system works over there. Like when you're putting like tags for your videos, I can't figure out how there's.
So basically, you just put a comma and space, and then it applies.
Okay, so it's just like YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. I wish they'd add playlists though. I'd like to sort my stuff out.
Yeah. It's so much easier if you have playlists because people literally will watch your stuff from the beginning or at some point and then want to check out more of your content. There's no way to basically create playlists like you can do on YouTube. Like on YouTube, I could put like, okay, this is my League of Legends podcast. Okay, this is where you go to watch that from beginning to where it's at currently. Same thing with this show. You can watch the show from here, when it started, all the way to here. You can't do that on Rumble yet. Like their mobile app experience is pretty jank, actually.
Yeah. I have the mobile app, but mine keeps stalling out anytime I try to watch something on it.
Yeah, mine is the same thing. I literally did it last night. I pulled it up, tapped it, it just kept loading. So I have good internet. I know I do.
Yep.
So
they're at about the 2014 YouTube level right about now. They will improve. Like I've been buying their stock. So like I think they will improve because YouTube don't seem to get the message that maybe you shouldn't crack down on so many people so hard. Now I haven't myself been cracked down on. I know a few people who have, but the problem is if you get a viable alternative, and technically Rumble is a viable alternative, people are going over there. They got money. Eventually they'll take over. They'll come and eat YouTube's lunch if YouTube isn't careful. And I like you. Don't get me wrong. I like YouTube. I like Rumble too.
Yeah.
But, and I don't want YouTube to die, but if they keep doing like they're doing, they're going to be exactly like the movie industry, the video game industry. They're going to overplay their hand and someone's going to come and eat their lunch. But
like, it's nice that Rumble is an alternative, but it's like the same thing with Kick as an alternative too. They're just, I hope we're not going to ever run into a potential place where they never get as big as you're thinking.
The problem with
risk,
business,
Yeah.
Well, they are fiduciarily responsible to grow. Like they are required to by law because now they sell stock.
Yeah. And it's publicly traded as a company. So people would know if your stock falls or goes up because those numbers are official now. It's one of these things where if they want to grow, I think they should put all that money that they have, apparently they have a lot of it, just give out to somebody. Why can't they just make the people on their platform who have been already dedicated to Rumble bigger? There's plenty of people that we know that are dedicated to Rumble right now that are just diehard Rumble supporters and fans that make content. They never get mentioned, talked about it all. They'll get like a random retweet and they'll be like, oh my God, this big guy at Rumble retweeted my tweet. It's like, that don't mean shit. I mean, nothing.
I'll tell you exactly how Rumble could destroy YouTube in under a year. All they have to do is get the VTubers on there and just let them be as weird and autistic as they want to be. Like, cut them free of the restraints YouTube puts on them, put them all over, let them go wild on Rumble and just upload the stuff that's safe for YouTube on YouTube because people will go where the wilder stuff is. That said, I'm not a big fan of VTubers myself, but I'm seeing which way the winds are blowing. And it's really hard to compete with interactive virtual anime girls.
With big tits. Mine has to have big titties if I do it.
I'm not going to comment on my preferences. Eventually, one of my employees is going to find my YouTube channel and find out what I have to say.
Good God, man. You know what's crazy? The reason why I enjoy the way Twitter works now is because you can see who blocked you without having any interaction with you. You'll go through threads and you'll be like, this person blocked you. Oh, good. Yep. I can block them back. That's the one thing about the block function that I did like is because you can now see people who basically didn't even bother giving you bother talking to you and they just randomly assume something from a tweet. So they just chose to block you. I'm like, okay, I'll just block you back then. I've never, like, half the people I block now haven't even people that I've been interacting with on, like, in, like, Twitter threads. I don't even know if these people, they just been, you go down, see comments, you're blocked. I don't know these people. They're just pronouns and they're sucking off the mega corporation. Good God, man. They're like, you should be happy Disney chose to give you this movie. Whoa. Good Lord.
Now keep in mind, people do have block lists out there that they just pick
True.
up. So
Yeah.
if you ticked off the wrong person, it might just be because they picked up the same block list. Or they picked up the same block list. Like, because I've gotten some fights with some people before. I've been blocked by people who I think I would normally agree with, but we just kind of got in the wrong argument. Yeah, we met each other in the wrong thread, talking about the wrong thing, but we'd agree on 95% of everything else. It's really weird. But Twitter has become a lot more like the internet used to be. Like if you remember back in the early 2000s to late 2000s when you could put anything on the internet, like back when, what was that website called where they had all the snuff films? Actually, probably best not to mention that. No, there were some websites you could see some stuff that's actually illegal going on, and you can't do that nowadays on YouTube. But Twitter's starting to move back in that direction where it's just like the Wild West again.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Unless you're gonna look the blue sky.
No. I don't have that particular proclivity, and I don't need to put a red dot on my house on the map. So
yeah, like, man, all of these guys were like, man, if Trump wins the election, I'm leaving. They to be fair, good amount of them did. Good. Now I don't have to sit on Twitter and look at Mark Hamill tweets. Mark Hamill is just a Trump deranged syndrome weirdo every day.
There's Lord. A guy who fell from glory, isn't it? Like, he got to be Luke freaking Skywalker. He got to be the Joker in Batman. Like, the man has a career that if he had just been able to keep his mouth shut, he would have died a legend. Now people are just like, oh, he's the guy who killed Star Wars, and he's just some psychopath who sits on Twitter all day and tries to ruin everybody else's fun. Like, I can't imagine having that much prestige and just throwing it all away.
God, the same thing with the whole comic book industry, and like a lot of those people that were on Twitter, they're just these these blue-haired weirdos with pronouns. They all went to blue sky. Good, you can just be in an echo chamber by yourself. The party that talks about being inclusive and diverse of thought. Yeah, that's not true. That's literally the biggest lie they've ever told in their entire lives. Diverse of thought.
I told a friend of mine, if the Republicans wanted to make sure that the Democrats never win another election, all they have to do is cancel the student loans. Like, take these and take the money from these bursaries. Of these schools, be like, this was a Ponzi scheme. You ripped off 3 generations of people. You're going to pay it back. That would take 95% of the ammo the Democrats have, because then they wouldn't be like, oh, you're crippled in debt. We'll fix this for you, because that would clear these people up and allow them to move on to a different career. It'd be like, because sometimes you just have to forgive somebody for something. And don't get me wrong, I don't care about my own student loans. They aren't very much. I'll probably have them paid off in the next 3 years. But some people are really crippled by these things. Like, they got $100,000, $200,000 in debt. They're never going to pay it back.
That's how you know college is a scam. That shit is trash. Good gosh.
There was a time when becoming an English major was so hard, you could literally get a 4-year degree in English and then become an actual doctor. Like, you were expected to learn like multiple languages. You were expected to learn like the archaic crap in English. Like the very fundamental, like it used to be one of the hardest, from what I understand, it used to be like one of the hardest majors, being an English major. Now it's like, oh, we're going to read some books about your feelings and how this group of people is bad. It's like, college is not what college used to be. It's become a scam that's just scamming a lot of people out of a lot of money. And they really need to put a cap on that. But
yeah, because you're looking at it now, like they have you take all those classes that you probably never even needed nor are ever going to use. It's the same thing with high school. Man, I think the reason why people still go is because they're suckered into that line of thinking that they were sold by the other generation, their parents. Like, oh, you have to go to school, graduate high school, go to college, then get a job. And it's like, times have massively changed since then, you know?
I think we need to adopt some kind of hybrid of the Japanese method, where you all go to go to school up to middle school, and then you go to different types of high schools.
Yeah, like, that'd be pretty cool. Yeah,
but like, not everybody wants to be a doctor or engineer. Some people want to be tradesmen. So why not teach them that in high school? So when they get out of high school, they can go straight into that.
Did you not have this in life where literally after high school you feel like you learned more outside of school than in it? Like,
Oh Lord, I did terrible in high school, but then I went to college to get my engineering degree, and I actually did great. I was on the dean's list. I was on the president's list. I think I was on the president's list, but and it was just because the high school classes don't care. Like I didn't realize that I could do math like I can do math now because the high school didn't challenge me. It never held me accountable for anything. But in the college, they're like, no, you're going to learn this. And if you don't learn this, we're just going to leave you behind and it's tough luck for you. And I didn't realize how competitive I was until I got in that kind of environment. And I think it's just the schools themselves aren't challenging kids. Like they aren't actually working towards the kids. They're just, oh, this is another institution and another bunch of jobs for some people to draw a pension from. And I'm going to hear that from my friend who's a teacher if he ever sees this video. But I think that they need to refocus the schools on kids. I think a lot of people, I think we should have the trade schools. I think we should have, we should gear different high schools towards different kinds of professions because some kids absolutely are going to be doctors and lawyers and engineers, and some people are going to be carpenters and mechanics, and let them learn that stuff in their teen years like we used to do with apprenticeships, and then let them go make money. We could probably do entirely away with student loans and the expenses of colleges if we did this.
Like, I think another thing is that I think people need to adjust their mindsets and how things change, but not like in a drastic way. It's like, you know, parents are like, yeah, you got to do all that stuff. And you got to get a house. And it's like, have you seen the housing market? Have you seen all this stuff happening? It's like people have not adjusted their mindset towards like the economic landscape that has changed. You know, I'm not saying like make your kid like a troon or anything, but you know, adjusting to what reality is setting, because it feels like people are so stuck in one mindset that they haven't even noticed anything happening from said mindset changing in real life. You know,
I think a lot of the problem with the whole housing market thing, there's a bunch of things that led up to this. And one of those is like, everybody's like, oh, I'm going to get a bunch of rentals and retire. And then there has people's like, I want to get some of these crappy houses and flip them and charge double. And then you've got people's like, I'm going to buy this as an investment. I don't want to sell my old house. I'm going to rent it out and I'm going to move to a bigger house. And it's kind of like in an MMO, like if you join it a couple years too late, and all the best crap's already taken and there's no way for you to catch up because all the people who were there have all the legacy stuff. But there's actually been laws that have, like some places have started making laws against like only a certain percentage of rental, only a certain percentage of the buildings in the town can be rentals. Like they're trying to make sure that people can still buy property there because you could literally destroy a whole town if there's nowhere for the workers to live.
Yeah.
Oh, you could have a dozen factories, but if they have to drive 2 hours to get there, well, you just ain't gonna have no workers, are you?
And see, at that point, you're gonna need to get at least 3 different wives and have like 20 different kids. That way, you can put all the wives in one house, but the kids, and you can only be in like the house you want. See, that's what you really got to put. Oh God! But the last few things I'll ask you, man, before we head out, is the first thing, which is, do you have anything planned coming up in 2025 that you want to let the audience know about?
Trying to release my second book in the Hapless Homesteader series, called Damn Problems. That's like the actual damn, not like the curse word. I'm hoping to do another book called The Debtor's Ball, which is about a bad luck charm. I'm hoping to have that released at the end of the year. And I'm just going to start reviewing more books, and I'm hoping to go to some conventions and like talk to authors, like do videos with the authors and artists and things like that to showcase some of the indies so people can become more familiar with them.
And meet Stephen King?
I don't know. After what he wrote about those kids doing to that corpse,
God, maybe you might end up meeting Ben Shapiro, your best friend.
I'm not sure he'd like me too much.
He's also a New York Times bestseller too, apparently. Because I guess we're just giving out that title to everybody at this point. You could be a New York Times bestseller now. Wait a minute. White guys are not in the meta right now.
I have reached #1 on Amazon in my categories at least 3 times.
See, there you go. That's how it works. And this thing is, you weren't even trying to get that validation from the New York Times bestseller. You just like, hey, I'm just going to just do my work and just hope for the best. So it's really all you can do in these kind of spaces anyway, you know?
Well, I'll be frank. If I got number one on the New York Times bestseller list, I would be shoving that in everybody's face at work. Like, look what I did. Look what I did.
Oh God, man. The last thing I'll ask you is, do you have any shout outs you want to get to anyone in particular and anything else you want to say before we end the show?
I'm going to shout out to my friend Leslie Shue. She was the first person whose books I ever reviewed. She's a very nice lady. You can follow her on Twitter. She does other people's book reviews, and she does a lot to help the indie community. Mm-hmm. And I will shout out my friend Ian Kirkpatrick, who runs her own channel where she reviews books and does live readings every Friday.
Hell yeah, man. It was great having you on. Once again, can't wait to have you on again sometime next year to catch up and talk about your book series and your conventions and all the massive YouTube content that you have. You're going to get so many views off of and become a millionaire, and you're going to hire me as your editor on your next book. Actually, I'm going to put Ebonics in your book. Actually, you won't notice.
Yeah, I dated a black girl for 10 years. I'm going to notice.
Dang it. That's how you do a checkmate. Dang it. Oh my God. Well, thank you guys for checking out this episode of the MSK Show, and we will see you guys later. Have a great day.